Hello, New Zealand! March for Life. To march on behalf of the most vulnerable, the most precious, our children, our future. You are marching for mothers and fathers, for families, to support them, to nourish them, because we know that our countries are founded on families, are founded on the future, which is our children. Over 500,000 lives have been lost in New Zealand to abortion. Our movement is a winning one. This is the good news. Change is possible.
Good morning, everyone. I still have this very sticky button here, my mute button. I think I need to get a new one. I used to be the one who always forgot to unmute, and now I'm busily, as I'm trying to do the show, trying to unmute myself. Good morning and welcome back to Solid Ground. I obviously wasn't here last week. I was at a conference in Australia. I'll give you a little bit of a heads up on that. But welcome or welcome back. To those who are new to Solid Ground, this is a show where I discuss the topics of the day, the cultural, the social, the political, the ethical, whatever catches my eye. But importantly, this is a live show, and so if you have any thoughts, comments or feedback or questions of your own, or things happening here in New Zealand or around the world that have caught your eye, let me know. And you can do that by messaging via Family First YouTube channel or through its Facebook page. Now that's really important, because you can be on my LinkedIn page, for example. You could be seeing this on Substack or Instagram. Wonderful to have you here. But I'm not able to access those comments until after the show. So if you want to get to me live, obviously find out where I'm recording. That would be novel. But go to the Family First YouTube channel or to its Facebook page, and then your comments will come through to me, just like Mike's here. In a bit of a tradition, again, if you're new, people tend to tell me where they are and what it's like, and I will have to say to Mike and Lynette, the first two comments coming through, and actually Rosie's as well, that it is quite cool and nippy here in Auckland as well. In fact, I might be caught short having only put a t-shirt on this morning. But to Darren, good morning. Ian, lovely to have you along as well. Looks like it's cold all across the country, if I'm following everyone. Catherine there. Fourth Adam. Murray is saying that people are not wrong. Lynette is not wrong, that it is quite chilly. Catherine's asking where's summer, and Nigel's saying g'day. So lovely to have you all along. I better stop there, or as I say, I'll spend the entire morning saying hello to everyone. As I say, I've been at a conference in Australia along with Bob. He might have talked about it yesterday on Daybreak. It was a conference called Aspire, and it's what I called ARC Adjacent. And you're going, what does that mean? So ARC is the name of another conference based out of London, the Alliance of Responsible Citizens. You might remember I went there last year. So the likes of Jordan Peterson, Douglas Murray, Constantine Kisson, Erica Commissar, Baroness Philippa Stroud, a lot of the political leaders from the centre-right attend that forum. And so Aspire is in a similar tradition, which is basically saying that our Western society, our Western values, our Judeo-Christian values, have values, and that we actually want to stand for them. And we see them, we think, being diminished in the current climate. That actually pride in our countries, in our value systems, in our history, is declining and being diminished by some. And so ARC in London and Aspire, as it's called in Australia, is a chance to say, no, we actually see value. We see faults as well. I think that's a really important and quick distinction for people, because often, I don't know if you do come across the really woke progressives or those who are ultra-liberal, hate Western society but celebrate everyone else's. They have no self-reflection. So Aspire is a chance to say, look, we can see where problems are, but we can also see the heritage that we've got. And Aspire was great. It's about 700 people. And it was a discussion of everything from women's rights through to, by women's rights I mean, the area around, particularly around the tension between trans rights and women's rights at the moment. The belief that actually there's biological reality. That's what I'm trying to get at. We talked about the political landscape. We talked about energy reserves and so forth. So again, the tension between those who pursue climate change agendas so aggressively that we find countries not having enough energy to support themselves. I didn't take a lot of photos. But this is with Sal Grover. I hope you recognise Sal. I've done podcasts and online radio with her. Sal is an amazing woman. I'm going to have her back on the Family Matters podcast very soon. So her and I caught up for the first time, which was great in itself. I do so much podcasting and online radio that I'm not always used to actually being with people. And so it was just nice to see her. Sal is the woman who set up a woman's only app, and a biological male or a trans woman decided that he wanted to be part of it and forced his way in. And long and short, because of the huge inadequacies in Australia's law, she is losing. Sal here is losing court cases that she is not allowed to stop trans women coming onto a women's only app. And so, yeah, amazing to actually catch up with her. If you have not heard her story, it's often referred to as Tickle versus Giggle. Giggle is the name of the woman's only app, and Tickle, you can't make this stuff up, is the name of the man. I think it's Roseanne Tickle is the name he's chosen, who insists that he should be allowed onto this woman's only app. And Sal's holding the line and fighting back. And so look up the podcast with her on Family Matters. I think it is well worth it. I'm just seeing some of the comments coming through as people continue to tell me. Oh, I see. So apologies. I see this comment from Mike. He was saying to get some isopropyl alcohol and to clean. I'm like, what? I'm trying to think, how's that going to help me on a cold morning? Then I clicked. It's to do with the button. It's the very sticky mute button that I have. Anyway, that was Sal Grover, so that's from Aspire, and that was the reason I wasn't here last week. Sydney doesn't have major time zone changes, but the conference itself was sort of getting in the way. So anyway, there we go. And actually, Catherine nails something here. Why do they have such revolting names? I thought you said revealings. That's how I read it in the first name. I think ultimately, in a lot of cases, and not all, we're dealing with people with major psychological issues. And we've talked about this here on the show before. And you certainly see it manifest in the young ones, which is why here at Family First we push very, very strongly against those who are pushing sex-rejecting medicine, trying to change children's biological sex. Because actually when you delve into the research and the data, when you talk to the young ones themselves, they have a whole host of mental health issues, and gender dysphoria is just one of them. And lo and behold, if you remove those other mental health issues, anxiety, depression and so forth, remarkably, gender dysphoria goes away. You don't have to chemicalize them or mutilate them. I might get to that a little bit later. I will jump back to what I had ordered in my head. But I should just say with Aspire, thank you for the opportunity to go. And why I say that is because here at Family First we rely on your support and donations, and you go, oh well, off you just go jetting around the world. But actually attending these conferences is a really important part of the work that Bob and I and the team do. It's a chance to hear new ideas, to engage in discussions. And for me in particular with the podcast, it's a great opportunity to identify guests. And so there's a whole host of people I've met and look forward to bringing on the podcast in the coming weeks. Now this, I don't know if you've been following the news, but I found this both sad and amusing. So this is John Davison. He's a man with Tourette syndrome. So you'll often know people with Tourette's, often involuntary tics, both physical but also verbal. And why I wanted to share this, because this came from the BAFTAs last week, where John here, basically he's not in the movie. There's a movie called I Swear. Sorry, I should have backed up the horse and cart there. There's a movie called I Swear about Tourette syndrome, about actually John here in particular. As I say, Tourette's usually manifests itself with involuntary tics of word and action. So again, people yell out all sorts of things, often things they do not want to say, the very things they know they shouldn't say, they do. So when he met the Queen, I think he said F the Queen. This was when he met her and Prince Charles. A whole lot of things that you and I would just go, oh my Lord. But he has Tourette's, and so Her Majesty at the time, Prince Charles, now the King, just accepted that. But at the BAFTAs, one of the sort of the wokest of the woke groupings, anything to do with celebrities and actors, he unfortunately, when two black actors were on stage, he let rip with the words themselves deeply offensive, and I won't use them here. But he was a man with Tourette's, who had just been celebrated through this film, I Swear, for drawing more attention to those with Tourette's syndrome. Well, the uproar shows you the utter inconsistency, stupidity of intersectionality, or of wokeism, however you want to define it. Because all of a sudden, the hierarchies which exist in intersectionality, who's the greater victim, come into play. So the BAFTA organisers, the BBC, a whole lot of activists and actors as well, up in arms that anyone should dare say anything offensive, in this case to the black actors on stage. Put really simply, guys, his Tourette's issue became very much secondary to ideas of race. And it's just a terrible example, I think, of why intersectionality as a concept is a real problem and doesn't work. And so intersectionality, I mean, most of you will know what it is, or most of you will experience. It's the hierarchy of victimhood which exists. So women are greater victims than men, so it goes. Black women are more victims than white women. A black lesbian woman outdoes a gay man, so on and so forth. It becomes actually not just a series of intersections, but a confusing web. And so John has fallen foul of this, sadly, for him. And what should have been a moment for people to understand Tourette's syndrome more was lost. In fact, the actors involved with the movie, inspired by John's life, have said actually it set things backwards. Now, John himself apologised. I don't have the video here. He apologised. He's aghast that he said what he said. But this is Tourette's syndrome. You say the very things you know you shouldn't. But there was no sympathy. There was no empathy. No intersectionality. Wokeism burst forth because according to that hierarchy of victimhood, certain groups must be protected. So they all went, well, not all, but most of the leaders in the BAFTA and the BBC all went running off to protect what they thought were the victimised majority. Look, for what it's worth, knowing people with Tourette's, the actors on stage should have just taken it in their stride, or at least, at the very least, those organising the BAFTAs. But they can't, you see. You can't take things in your stride when you are someone who subscribes to intersectionality, wokeism, or critical race theory. You must always maintain the hierarchy. So look, kudos to John for actually being part of this film and actually showing, what Tourette's is like. In better news and in good news, this is coming out of the United Kingdom. If you've been following for the last little while, you'll know that the United Kingdom has been pushing for a euthanasia law. It's coming through the members' channel, so it's not a government bill like it is in some countries, but it's like here in New Zealand. It was put forward by an individual member. but it looks like it's all but toast. It's all but toast. So the bill had passed what they call the Commons, so like New Zealand's Parliament, but it's now in the second house, the Lords. And actually I've had a little bit to do with this, not necessarily the defeat of it, but actually assisting different MPs and Lords. And actually some of you might remember last year I actually get up to nice and bright and early in the morning, like 4 a.m. or something, to go and actually present to the House of Lords. So I've been following this closely, and the good news, it looks like it's going to fail. One, because they are seeing that actually a number of the Lords, a majority, it seems, are speaking against the bill. But more importantly for its demise is that the Lords, like our Parliament, is running out of time. There's not going to be time to actually conclude it, and therefore the bill drops. So I just think that is exceptionally positive. And I just sort of put, so this is not to do with this topic, so I'll drop that off. This is a comment, sorry, they're all scrolling past me at the moment, to do with John. Yeah, it is hypocrisy. It's double standards. I probably should have said that at the start. I'm not always so articulate. I say a lot of words, but I don't always get to the right ones. Yeah, so anyway, I just thought that was interesting, as I say, and really positive. Like so many things, until the curtain falls, until it's absolutely done and over, it's not over, certainly when it comes to anything in politics. And look, I can't talk the show today without touching very quickly on Iran. Whether it's quick or not, we'll see. This is actually an image of a female protester from a previous protest. As you probably know, the Islamic regime, which runs Iran, has closed off the internet again after Israel and the United States struck. Look, there's a huge amount of discussion at the moment around whether this was the right thing to do or not. Should they have intervened, as in Israel and the US, or not? And obviously debate now around the consequences. And all of these, I have to say, are good questions, particularly as well around the consequences. Will actually the Islamic regime topple? What's the exit plan for the likes of the US and Israel? What is the fallout, quite literally, as Iran is firing missiles at most of its neighbours, actually, from Qatar to Bahrain to the United Arab Emirates, I think Dubai and Abu Dhabi, Saudi Arabia. They're firing missiles left, right and centre, and of course at Israel. The fallout is already significant. Strikingly, actually, I might just quickly add, the Arab states are actually backing America and Israel. We certainly know very explicitly that Saudi Arabia is, which is striking. But look, there's so many things that we could untangle here. As we know, when the attack started, we suspected, I think most of you will have as well, would have realised this is what they call a decapitation campaign to remove the political and military leadership, which they have. So this is actually images of the Ayatollah, their supreme leader's compound, which they took him out. Crazily, the Iranian, actually, you've got to get my terms quite right here. The Iranian people are victims of the Islamic regime, and a lot of my Iranian and Persian friends would say that the Islamic mullahs are not Persian, are not Iranian. They're bringing in in their case, a religion and a political system that they don't want, which is foreign to them. So I think is actually a valid point to make. So as an encouragement to people, when you are talking about the attacks on Iran, that's true on the land of Iran, but actually attacking the Islamic regime, these mad mullahs, as we sometimes refer to. So they've taken out the supreme leader and a number of other leadership. They decided for some bizarre reason to all meet together in that one building that I just showed, the supreme leader's compound. Unfortunately for them, but good for the rest of the world, the Iranian leadership, its military and intelligence, is completely compromised by the likes of Mossad and CIA, and so they knew they were there and took them out. And look, as I said at the start, there's a lot of debate, and you all may have your different views of whether this is the right thing to do or not. I lean towards the side this is the right thing to do. The Islamic regime is evil, and I don't use that word lightly. In fact, a word I try not to use all that often. I think it's used far too frequently in society. But the Islamic regime is evil. What it has done to the Iranian people, is despicable. There's good intelligence to suggest that after the last sets of protests, you might remember those a few weeks ago, over 30,000, perhaps as much as 60,000 Iranian civilians were killed within days, I should stress, not over weeks, within days. You need to let that sink in, because you would have noticed in New Zealand, not a word, no protests, no chanting in the street, no flying of flags, no performances from the likes of the Green Party and Te Pāti Māori and others. There was nothing. So the very groups that are out on the street protesting for Palestine, a conflict most of them don't understand, have nothing to say when the Islamic regime kills 30,000 or more of its civilians in a matter of days. I think you need to let that sink in. The violence of the regime against its people, the violence it has against women. As you'll know, or might remember, there was the woman Mahsa Amini. Now, she was just one of thousands, probably hundreds of thousands of women who have died at the hands of this regime. So it's a despicable regime, and Mahsa was killed because she wasn't wearing her hijab right. So never forget, the Islamic regime is a bit like Afghanistan and other Muslim countries which are applying Sharia law. We just need to look at the Irans and Afghanistans to understand what the extremes of Sharia law look like. And I think it's important to see and remind ourselves, because we enjoy the freedoms of the West, because Iraq doesn't have freedoms. Then the other, of course, is that Iraq is always Iran. Iran has been exporting terror ever since the Islamic regime took hold in 1979. So obviously they want to wipe Israel off the map. They are completely dedicated to that. They are the funders of Hamas and Hezbollah. They are funders of most of the Islamic radicals around the world. They're just a problem. And as you know, over recent years, they've been trying to get a nuclear bomb. And the likes of President Obama drafted a agreement years ago that supposing, you'll hear all, and why I mention this is because all the liberals will say, well, no, there was this agreement. You hear it from Helen Clark and others as well. Oh, there was this agreement that Obama signed with Iran. And they would agree not to pursue a nuclear weapon, and we would allow some sanctions to be released. Well, Donald Trump threw that out in his first term, and rightly so. Rightly so, because the agreement was failing on all counts. The only people that agreement suited was the likes of Helen Clark, the United Nations, and other people who just cannot see the Islamic regime for who they are. Because all that was happening is that sanctions were being slowly released on Iran, and the Islamic regime continued to develop its nuclear and ballistic capabilities. The agreement was achieving absolutely nothing. And even when the agreement was gone, and sanctions were being put on, and threats were being made to Iran, they were being warned not to continue their nuclear explorations. They have. They just kept pushing and pushing and pushing, which is just such a classic case of the woke West, if I could say it that way. Because again, you'll have the United Nations, Guterres, so I keep picking on Helen Clark, but she's been very vocal down here in New Zealand, and a lot of these other international experts say, no, but there's agreements and we have to have more diplomacy and more negotiation. Well, we've been negotiating with these Islamic lunatics for years in Iran, and all they do is they smile and nod, and then they continue to do what they want to do. And what's really important as well, and this applies to Hamas, Hezbollah, they see concession as weakness. When you give the likes of Hamas or the Islamic regime in Iran a concession, they see it as weakness, a chance to rearm, to re-embolden themselves. And I would suggest to you that we in the West don't always seem to understand that. And I think it's good that we in the West have developed a system where we do negotiate, where we do compromise, where we do make concessions. You know, we see that in a lot of our own fights. If we're having a fight in New Zealand, not to the level of violence we're seeing in the Middle East, but both sides give a little bit and we find a way forward. We found that a lot in politics, believe it or not, between the centre-left and the centre-right. But that's not how it works in a lot of the Middle East. And I just think we in New Zealand have to understand this. So whenever you hear someone from the United Nations or an Amnesty International, or Phil Goff or Helen Clark or Robert Patman or any of these people referring to Obama's treaty, it was useless the day it was signed, and it was even more useless by the time the Trump administration threw it out. also put to them, not that you'll necessarily be talking to them in person, but where has this endless talk gone? And it's gone nowhere. The Islamic regime just continues to be emboldened to kill more and more of its people, so on and so forth. So you can hear where I stand, I think, pretty clearly on this. If for some reason you want to read more, go and check out my latest Substack. It's where I say I don't think in the West we can understand or differentiate anymore between evil and good. Because as I said right at the start, the Islamic regime is evil. And what it's doing to its people, what it's doing around the world is evil. And I do think there comes a point in time where it is right, proper and just, actually, to remove these tyrants, or at least try to. And I think this is probably the best opportunity for the Iranian people in a generation. I actually agree with President Trump's statement in his televised statement. This is probably their only chance in a generation. Now, we'll have to see, because power does not concede easily. These Islamic rulers and their supporters are fanatics. It will be hard to get rid of them. But look, there's much that can be discussed. There's much, guys, that you might think yourselves. There are a whole lot of people discussing, is this a just war or not? Is this internationally legal or not? Was it the right thing to do or not? Read the Substack, you'll see and hear my thinking. But importantly too, and I'll begin to finish here, and thanks for all the comments rolling through as well, the inability of some here in New Zealand and across the West, but here in New Zealand, to understand what is evil versus what is good is not just about what's happening with the Islamic regime. It's also an inability in New Zealand to see domestic policies, that we can no longer apparently see what is right and wrong. There's a whole lot of people, not a majority, but a whole lot of people who can't tell the difference between a biological man or a biological woman. Or to be more accurate, they don't want to. They know darn well what the difference is, but they just don't want to believe it. There are people who believe in sex-rejecting procedures for children, so chemicalizing and mutilating children. They call it trans medicine or gender-affirming medicine. We at Family First just see it as abuse. There's, as I say, ongoing people, or an ongoing array of people who no longer can see the difference between right and wrong, good and evil. And it's part of the reason we do shows like this, to try and actually bring perspectives that you won't get in the mainstream media, and topics that you won't hear about overseas, like this one here. I better begin wrapping up, because as typical as me, I talk too much, as everyone knows. I talked about my own Substack. Of course, Bob is always busy writing, so go to his Substack as well. Just look up Bob McCoskrie or McBlog and you'll find his work there. Or subscribe, of course, as you know. Bob is very, very good at... whoops, and I pressed the wrong button. Let's do this. There we go. I was going to tell you how to subscribe. If I do this, it'll work. Be it YouTube or Substack, go across to McBlog. Check it out. We'll certainly go onto the YouTube channel and subscribe, and then you'll know that we're going to be online. Jump onto Substack, as I say, and then you can read what Bob and I are writing. Last week or 2 weeks ago, I had a podcast on with... Now, what have I done here, people? I have pressed a wrong button somewhere. Aha! There. 2 weeks ago, I did a Family Matters with Greg Fleming. He's an MP here in Auckland, probably known to many of you. I've recently done an interview with him on RCR, so if you get your news there, we're talking modern slavery. If you don't know what that is, let's say jump onto the Family Matters podcast or onto RCR here and have a chat, as I say, Family Matters with Greg. So you've got Greg in two places, so go and check that out. And a reminder as always, guys, you can always watch, read and listen all of our material. And look, final message from me, and I will play the video again as we go out, is it's March for Life this Saturday. We're meeting downtown, outside Commercial Bay, and what used to be like the Britomart Square or QE2 Square. We're meeting there. The march is from 2 o'clock. Would love to have you along. I will be there. But look, I will be back on Thursday. Look forward to seeing and talking to you all then. And thank you for all the comments. And if I was to summarise all the comments, keep warm. It sounds like it's a chilly day here in New Zealand. All the best, guys. Thanks for joining the show.
Hello, New Zealand. March for life. To march on behalf of the most vulnerable, the most precious, our children, our future. You are marching for mothers and fathers, for families, to support them, to nourish them, because we know that our countries are founded on families, are founded on the future, which is our children. Over 500,000 lives have been lost in New Zealand to abortion. Our movement is a winning one. This is the good news. Change is possible.